Welcome to another episode of Church Energy. I'm excited to have with us our intern at Wylie Church of Christ this summer, Michael Rucker. Michael, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody?
My name is Michael Rucker. I am a student at Freed-Hardeman University right now. I've been studying Bible there, hoping to become a full-time pulpit minister one day. But this summer I've been doing youth internship here at the Wylie Church of Christ.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about on the podcast today is your work with the youth. Your title isn't necessarily youth intern. It's more of just congregational intern. You've got a lot of experience in the pulpit, teaching classes. I know we've had you on the summer series on Wednesday night, preaching Sunday morning, Sunday night, leading singing and worship too. But the bulk of your work has been with the youth. So what has been the most exciting part about working with the youth? Like what have you seen from that?
I think probably my favorite part about working with the youth is how relationship based it is, and like how much of an opportunity there is to get close to the youth, and just kind of the relationships you can form from that. I think it's really easy to do that through youth ministry, and be able to just see the impact that you have working with that age group at such a young age, and seeing like the way that impacts them in their life in this stage.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the relationship is a huge part of it. Like that's one of the things that, after you go back to Freed this fall, we're going to still try to build on the momentum with the youth group that has been established this summer. And one of the things that I really want to emphasize to people is continuing to build those relationships. We have to build intergenerational relationships, whether it's young people to old people to young people. I know that's something that you've tried to work on also, is getting the young people connected with the older members of the congregation. But it really takes a lot of effort to make those relationship type of connections with the kids. Like it doesn't just happen because you're in there teaching Bible class. Like it happens because you're involved in their lives. It happens because you're asking about their lives. It happens because you're communicating to them in a way that they hear, because every generation communicates differently. And we kind of talked about that a little bit too with how teachers communicate to their kids. So what is some of the ways that you communicate with the young people in order to connect with them?
Well, I think, like you said, it's bigger than just those opportunities where I'm teaching in class, or I'm, doing a devotional with them or whatever. It's bigger than those. The relationship happens outside of those opportunities, and they listen to you more when you do form those relationships. So the biggest part, I think, in communication in any form of ministry is establishing those relationships with people in your congregation outside of what takes place on Sunday or on Wednesday, right? And that's been a huge part of just this summer, and why I love youth ministry so much right now is because I have that opportunity sometimes day to day throughout the week to establish those relationships on a peer-to-peer level. And that's been really awesome this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it makes me think actually, as far as like the way that we communicate with young people, of our worship too, our worship, there's a lot of new songs that are coming up. I think Praise and Harmony does a great job of writing new songs that still have a very deep meaning to them. And what we take even a lot of like Christian pop songs, and turn them a cappella so we can sing them in worship. And the messages in those songs, like quite a few of them actually have a really powerful message too. One of the ones that I was thinking of is by Brandon Lake. It's really, really new. It's called That's Who I Praise. I don't know if you've heard that one.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, dude. That is a song that it really fires me up. But I really want to turn it a cappella so we can sing it in worship. But the way the song starts is, I want to dance like David. I want a faith like Paul. I want to sing like Silas, tearing down these prison walls. And it talks about going through the fire. God's got my back, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It references all of these Old Testament Bible stories, and we're putting it into a song. I just think that's part of the way that different generations communicate. We're using things that we're familiar with in songs that we can use in worship, and we're praising God in a way that is tying back to Scripture, but also referencing these biblical stories from a new generation perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like within that song, even the examples you brought out, there's a lot of energy behind those, right? And I think throughout, a lot of those that you mentioned were in the Old Testament. And we don't focus a lot on the Old Testament as much as we do the New Testament a lot of times. And when you start bringing to life some of those stories in a song like that, it makes you realize like how much energy there is in how people serve God in the Old Testament and how we can still serve him today. And we want to have, an ability to dance like David and have faith like Moses, right? And I just think that can be really inspiring to a church when you sing about those, because there's a lot of emotion behind singing a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
And so then when you employ that energy within lyrics like that, it really fires you up. And I love songs like that that we sing, and it's definitely just an opportunity to get fired up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I bring it up because it's about like the way that we communicate in different generations,
right?
And that's part of building the relationship with teens is being able to communicate in a way that they feel like they can build a relationship with you, and it opens them up, opens the young people up. But anyway, so that's all. Everything about youth, I feel like working with the youth and inspiring the youth, energizing the youth. But how does that translate to the rest of the congregation? Do the old people, I say old people, do the older people, even people like in their 30s and 40s that remember what it was like to be in a youth group, and now they've gone on, they're having their young families now. But do all of the older folks from the young people, do they get energized by seeing a group of young people that are excited to be here, excited to be together? They share common values, common faith, and a common belief, and they want to be together. Does that really inspire the old people too?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think it kind of happens in three different ways from a perspective of like how the youth inspires that energy within the entire congregation. I've seen it this summer. I think the first way is it offers fresh perspective. A lot of times the youth have ideas that some people just don't think of, right? And a lot of times great ideas that we can figure out how to employ into whether it's evangelism or worship or whatever it may be. It's like, okay, man, we wouldn't have thought of this without this fresh perspective, right? And that can be very helpful in a lot of ways. Another way is the communication that we talked about. And that's necessary in a church in order to keep growing. Like if we're going to keep reaching these different generations out there, younger generations, you got to have younger people who know how to communicate to them, right?
Man, yeah.
That's
just to jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Like that's one thing I really saw during VBS this summer is when we're trying to promote for VBS, we're sending out the young people, because that's who's going to effectively communicate what we're doing here in the building to other young people.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was definitely evident while we were, walking around, talking to different families and whatnot. Like sometimes we'd walk by some people or a family, and, we try to offer it to the parents or whatever, and they were kind of dismissive. And then we'd hop on that opportunity to then offer it to the kids who are also in that family, and they were more receptive to it. And I even saw one of the families that we did that with here at VBS one night, and I was like, okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So that for sure. The other thing that I was thinking of, and I forgot it now.
Because I jumped in.
And I forgot it now. What would I say? Fresh perspective, communication. Oh, excitement.
Okay.
Excitement for sure. I think a lot of times, like if you remember, like when you first became a Christian and you first were learning all these things about the Bible and about Christian living, right? It gets you fired up when you first discover something. That happens with, I think, all of us. Like when we first discovered something, we can get super passionate about it early on, and it gives us a lot of motivation. And obviously motivation isn't something you can hold on to, that comes and goes, right? It's a lot different than discipline. But when you have younger people who are bringing that excitement, bringing that passion and motivation in a church, it gives the rest of the church motivation, because they see that growth and they remember how they felt when they first discovered that passion and whatnot for Christ.
Yeah. I was preaching earlier this summer at Flower Mound Church of Christ for their summer series. They do it on Sunday nights. But my topic was the song Living Hope. And I really just re-looked at the story of the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, and reading that almost like trying to put in your mind like you're reading it for the first time, almost like you're watching a movie, like it's a superhero movie, and you're like, throughout Jesus's ministry, he's the hero, like he's the star, he's everything. And if you're watching it for the first time, you're like, wait, he's arrested. It doesn't look like he's getting out.
Yeah.
Wait, he's getting beaten up. He's getting flogged. This can't be happening to the hero. Surely he's going to call 10,000 angels and get himself out of this mess. And then he's on the cross. He's, you can imagine when you start to read deeper into how Romans crucified people, that he's pushing up through that nail in his feet so he can get a breath. And you're seeing this story unfold, and you're like, how can this be happening to the hero? And then he cries out, he breathes his last, and you're like, there's no way this can be happening. So when you read it and see it through a pair of fresh eyes, like you've never studied it before, it is such a powerful story, because then 3 days later, boom, he rises.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the hero that I've been reading about this whole time. That's the hero that I knew was going to come through in the story. And I think that's what young people really provide for the church, especially if it's somebody that hasn't grown up in the church, hasn't heard these stories since they were 2-3 years old. And they're being invited by their friends in the youth group, and they're hearing the story, and they're bringing that fresh perspective. Man, that really does energize and motivate not just them and their friends, but the rest of the youth group and the whole congregation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I remember the first time that I actually sat down and I read through the full book of Matthew, and I'd never done that before. I was raised in the church. I'd always, read various stories of Jesus. I knew pretty much Jesus' entire life just because, just from learning different stories about the Gospels, right? But I never actually sat down and read through it and let that have an impact on me. And I remember getting up to the point where Jesus died on the cross, and I literally started crying as I was reading it. And it has so much more of an impact when you go through it like that and you look at it from a fresh perspective with new eyes, right? And that just provided so much motivation and energy in me, definitely, when I was reading through that. And I just remember thinking, man, what if the whole church did this, on a consistent basis, for sure. And I think that's something that the youth, a lot of time, that motivation they can provide is through, like we talked about, that fresh perspective.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I really wish the whole church could take a Sunday and put out of your mind what you know and reread this story as though it's the first time. Oh my goodness, it would be so powerful. But anyways, Michael, thank you for joining us today. Yeah. This has been something that the podcast has been something I've kind of put to the side for the past couple of months, and just because of a busy summer getting stuff going. So we're glad to be back here with you, whether you're watching us on YouTube or Spotify. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that little subscribe button, turn on the bell so you get notifications whenever a new episode is posted. If you're listening to this on Spotify, make sure you click the follow button. We want to be able to keep you in the know whenever new episodes are posted. Starting from here and throughout the rest of the fall, there will be a new episode every single Friday, even though we've taken off the summer so far. So, Michael, do you have any kind of closing thoughts for folks today?
Just thanks for having me on, man. I was super glad to be able to do this. Keep focusing on the Lord's word, looking for that fresh perspective, and just make sure that you pay attention to the youth in your congregation and try to have relationships with them. And if you are a youth, look for opportunities to get relationships with those who are older than you, because that's had such a tremendous impact, I think, on us as a congregation this summer.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, good luck at Freed this fall. I know you're going to do great.
Appreciate it.
I can't wait until you graduate and you're working full-time somewhere. The work that you're going to do is going to be amazing.
Me too. I'm excited. Yep.
Thank y'all again for tuning in.